Mic check 1 2. It's the Y2K collector, and collecting physical Switch games is about to get very tricky. And we're talking about a system that it's already been very tricky to collect for. Now, a lot of times when we think about modern games, like games that you can get on the Switch or the Switch 2 or the PS4, PS5, I think most people feel like you can get a lot of those games at regular MSRP, right? Meaning that you shouldn't really be paying more than what the standard price is for the game. But what I've learned after collecting for the Switch for 6 to 7 years now is that Switch games are also subject to the same types of price increases and price spikes that you would see when it comes to retro games. And in fact, there are a lot of Switch games that blow retro game prices out of the water. Now, the dangerous thing about the Switch is that in some ways it feels like a console that you can collect an unlimited amount of games for. You know, when it comes to the Switch, there are so many titles, there are so many games that it just starts to feel like a black hole and you could just keep collecting and collecting and collecting. So that's why I've created a general rule of thumb for myself when it comes to collecting Switch games that I'm only going to collect for 2 to 3 categories. And those categories are typically going to be shoot 'em ups, uh, beat 'em ups, or side-scrolling Metroidvania style games. Those are typically the types of games that I collect for on the Switch. Now, I will deviate here and there if there's a really cool like 3D action platformer or something like that that releases. I'll make the exception. But for the most part, to keep myself from buying everything that I see, I've typically kept my collecting categories down to those 3 types of categories. But the other night, I was doing a live and I started talking about some changes that I've noticed when it comes to the values of certain games, because there are certain Switch games that I want to add back to my collection. And I'm realizing how much Switch game prices are changing in real time. And I think this is what kind of creates a little bit of the FOMO and why some people feel like they need to purchase certain games like right away when they get them. So I kind of want, or when they see them rather. So I kind of wanted to look at a few Switch games that I've noticed have done some massive changes since the last time that I looked at them. Now, I don't look at prices very often. I don't, I'm not constantly on price charting, especially when it comes to my Switch collection, because I sold about 80% of my Switch collection a couple years ago, and I only kept some of the games that I really wanted. And since then, I've been slowly adding games back to the collection here and there, and it's honestly been mostly games that I play with the family. But I kind of wanted to take a look at some games that I've noticed some significant price changes with them, and then also talk about some games that have been consistently expensive and do a little bit of hypothesizing as to why that is. Now, one of the games that I want to take a look at is Super Mario 3D All-Stars. Now, Super Mario 3D All-Stars was a game. I remember that before they released this game, they said that it was going to be limited. They said there was going to be a limited number of these games. Um, and I think that right out the gate caused the price of this game to uh, get inflated and stay inflated. And as of right now, I think finding a complete in-box copy of this game, you're probably above $100, somewhere between $100 and $120. And that price is being propped up in the secondary market, not only by like eBay and Mercari and other sites like that, but it's also being propped up by sites like GameStop. Like even GameStop will sell you Super Mario 3D All-Stars for like $100. And so this is one of those games where it's kind of understandable as to why the pricing of this game is, even if that reason is artificial, there is still some sort of rhyme or reason as to why this game is priced so high. Not only that, I mean, it does have 3 of the most iconic 3D Super Mario games there. I mean, Mario 64, Galaxy, and Sunshine. I mean, those are some of the 3 most iconic games that you could get in terms of like, I guess, retro now, because the GameCube is retro, the N64 is retro, and so is the Wii. So these are kind of like modern retro 3D games, and that kind of explains that. But there were other changes that I really didn't quite understand when I was kind of looking through my small Switch collection. One was Salt and Sanctuary. Now, Salt and Sanctuary is a bit of like a Metroid. It's like a Dark Souls style Metroidvania game that was released on the Switch a while back. This got a general release. You could have picked this up at Target, Walmart, Best Buy. This wasn't anything special. This wasn't released through any like limited company, like Strictly Limited or Limited Run or anything like that. Nevertheless, this game randomly, like around 2022 or so, spiked all the way up to around $100, if not more. This was $100+ game for quite some time, and I didn't really understand why. I didn't understand what the what the deal was. Now I understand with this game, if you get this version of the game, you do get obviously some extras inside this package, some posters. You get the DLC, all that stuff, soundtrack, all that stuff is cool. But this was really just kind of like a Souls-like Metroidvania style game, and I wasn't really quite clear why this one popped up so high. Well, recently this game has actually dropped back down to earth, and from what I've seen listings for this game as low as 55 to 60, between 55 and $60. So this game has dropped back down, and you don't have to worry about spending an incredible amount of money for this game because it's dropped. And so there's no real rhyme or reason for it. If someone knows, you guys can let me know down in the comments. I don't know if this game got a reprint or if there's a reprint coming for this game, because I know sometimes that can affect things. But that was a massive drop. And if you were someone who spent like a high amount of money on this game, you're probably a little bummed because you're realizing you didn't have to. Now, Fury is a little bit different for me. Fury is another game that took a huge drop in value. I remember, in the early days of Limited Run, when they first started releasing games, and especially like around the pandemic time, and I said this in a live the other day, you had to be first in line to pick up these limited run games on the Switch, because these games are like hotcakes, and if you weren't like ready to purchase them as soon as they were made available on Limited Run's website, the only place you could find them again was on the secondary market. And so with a game like Fury, when this game released, I remember back 2022 or so, this was another $100 game. And Fury is a very fun game. If you've never played it, it's a boss rush style game. It combines hack and slash and shoot 'em up elements together in like this boss rush battle style game. The game is very intuitive. It learns your patterns. So if you think you can like cheese in this game, you can't, because the computer is like processing what you do, and it's like coming up with countermeasures to stop you. It's a very frustrating game, but it's a very fun game. And it's also one that's dropped in value as well. Now, there's a PS4 version of this game, and I can understand the PlayStation 4 version dropping in price, but the value of Fury dropping down to where it's at now, which is roughly, again, like a $55, $60 game, is a little mind-boggling, because I don't think we ever got a re-release for this game, at least not on the Switch. I think there was a reprint on the PS4. I don't know if we ever got a reprint on the Switch for this physically. And so there's really no rhyme or reason as to why the pricing on this has changed in my mind. Now, I'm not keeping up with Switch prices or anything like that, but Fury is a sick game, and this is one that if you've wanted to add it to your collection, I guess you can add it now without breaking the bank. But this is another one. Now, here we have something a little bit different, right? So we have a strictly limited game here. This is Griffin Knight Epic. This is a cute 'em up. For those of you who don't know, a cute 'em up is basically a shoot 'em up. This is like a side-scrolling shoot 'em up with like cutesy features to it. So you're like on this knight, you're shooting these fiery darts. That's pretty much what it's about. It's a cute 'em up. Think Cotton, think like the Cotton games, but just with this type of motif, I guess, for lack of better terms. But this is an early Strictly Limited release. As you can see, Strictly Limited 41. There were only 3,000 copies of this game printed. And I think I don't know, I think that was the difference with Strictly Limited and Limited Run, especially back in the day. You kind of knew, did they do the same thing with this one here? Yeah, with Strictly Limited, back then they were only doing like 2,000 or 3,000 prints of each game, which drove the price of these Switch games even higher, in my opinion. And Griffin Knight Epic, especially before this game released, because it took a while for them to release this one. I remember this one was trending like 150 or something like that, 150. And then once it released, the value of the game dropped down to about 120. I don't know if it was just that people started playing it and realized they didn't like it. But now today, Griffin Knight is another example of a game that's dropped down into the 60s or so. I don't have the exact prices, but I know this game I've seen this game below $70. You can pick this one up as well. And this is an early Strictly Limited game that's just tanked in price. And for me, there's no rhyme or reason. I'm not as experienced with Griffin Knight as I am with like some of the other games that I'm going to be mentioning here. But if you're a fan of cute 'em ups, I mean, you're going to like this game. It's pretty decent from the gameplay footage that I saw before. But this is another one that dropped in price. So you have three games that were once pretty expensive, right? Different companies got a general release here. You have something from limited run, and then another one from strictly limited. All of these were ridiculously priced at one point, and now they've come back down to earth, which kind of just tells me that there's been a shift, I guess, in the Switch scene when it comes to collectors and how they view games. Because on the flip side of this coin, you have games that have actually gone up in price or maintained their price. Now, the first one that I'm going to look at is this game called Dustin, Elysian Tale. This is one of my favorite Switch games, actually. This is a very beautifully hand-drawn. This game has like a hand-drawn art style to it, and it has some of the most peaceful and serene music I've ever heard in a Switch game. I love the music in this game. It's a side-scrolling hack and slasher. If you're a fan of games like Muramasa, the Demon Blade, or if you're a fan of like Dragon's Crown, like Vanillaware, that type of animation, you will like Dustin Elysian Tale. It's a pretty cool story. This mysterious warrior finds this sword that speaks, and they develop this relationship where you learn attacks, you learn different attacks, you can level up. It has like some RPG elements to it, but it's pretty much a side-scrolling hack and slasher game. And from what I understand, I think this released on the 360. Now, this is a very fun game. I've played a lot of this game, and this was a limited run release. This was one of the earlier limited run releases as well. I'm not sure what number this is. Does it say? Yeah, so limited run 12. So this was the 12th limited run release, a very early limited run game. And I've seen the price for this fluctuate. I've seen Dust come all the way down. I don't know if I've ever really seen it under $100 because Dust has always been a pretty expensive game. But I've seen it come pretty close to 100, and now from what I'm seeing, it's back up to like 150, 160, 170, and it's kind of bumped all the way back up. Now, I know that with this release of the Switch 2, people are going to start revisiting their Switch 1 games. And I think Dust is an example of a game that probably would benefit from the horsepower that you get from the Switch 2, because the one thing that happens in this game is there is slowdown. Sometimes you're attacking a lot of enemies, and some of his moves, just there's a lot going on. Like, if this little fairy right here is like your helper throughout the game, and she throws out like these sparkling sprites that can add to your combo chain, because you can like chain combos together and all that type of stuff. And I think as you add her attacks in, mixed in with your hack and slash attacks, depending on how many enemies are on the screen, it can cause slowdown. So Dust might be a game that once I eventually do get a Switch to, probably around the holiday season, this will probably be one of the first games I play just to see how well it runs, because you do experience slowdown. So I don't know if the fact that the Switch 2 came out is a reason why this game has bumped back up in price because people want to play it again. But this is a game that's going up, right? And so it just kind of tells me where the focus of Switch collectors is shifting. You also have another game like RX and Raijin. Now, I'm pretty sure that this was a Play Asia exclusive that never got a digital release. So I don't think you can download this game. This is a shoot 'em up. So this is a very niche type of game. But RX has always been expensive, right? I'm not going to act like it was ever a cheap game outside of when it initially released. But this is another one of those games that is holding its price and still going up in value just because of the fact that it's an exclusive title. I think you can only get it physically unless that has changed. You guys can let me know down in the comments if this has gotten a digital release anywhere. But from what I understand, you can only play this physically with the cartridge, and it's a shoot 'em up, and I think all the content is on the cartridge. So this is another one that the interest is still there, and people are still really going after these types of games. And I think this just kind of speaks to your ability to really niche down when collecting for the Switch. It's really easy to niche down so that you don't get caught up in all the thousands of games that are released on the console. You can really specifically focus on what you like. And if you're a shoot 'em up fan, RXN is definitely going to be a game that you're looking for. Now, this is a game that kind of shocked me value-wise. So Inmost was a game that for the most of last year kind of hovered around $80 to $90. And then it started to creep up slowly, and I think it had just crossed over like $100. Well, now for some reason, Inmost is a $140 to $150 game, and there's again, it's no rhyme or reason to me as to why this game shot up. Now, I bought this game purely because I thought it was a beautiful looking 2D pixel art game. It follows this like kind of monochromatic art style, and it has just like these very interesting elements to it. I'm pretty sure this is a Metroidvania style 2D side scroller here, and it's just got a very interesting story. It has like this ominous feel to it. And this was one that I wanted to have in my collection. I definitely knew that the minute this game came out, I wanted to have it in my collection. I was lucky I got it on a pre-order. This is when you had to really jump on those super rare pre-orders. This was one of the last games from super rare where you had to be on top of it or it was gonna sell out in no time. And I think I ordered 2 copies of this game. I sold one, and I used to do that, admittedly. Back when they were doing this, I would order 2 copies so that I could sell one and pay for the first one, so I wasn't coming out of pocket. It's not like that anymore. It's really not like that anymore. You can pretty much pick up a super rare game with ease. But, you know, with certain titles, I didn't do it with every super rare title because I knew not every super rare title was going to sell out like that. But you just kind of knew which ones were going to sell out. And Inmost at this point is one of those games that is continuing to go up in price. And I really don't understand what's driving it. This was one of those ones that, if I'm not mistaken, that only released, I think only about 4,000 copies of this game released, between 3,000 and 4,000 copies of this physically. So that also contributes to the value factor, but we can't always say that because you have a lot of super rare games that have limited releases that aren't crazy expensive. And this is, you know, number 51. So this was still, I don't want to say early, but this isn't, I don't know where we're up to with super rare releases. I think we're in the hundreds at least. So this is a few years old now in super rare's library. But this one is another one that has jumped. And then last but not least, you have a very early super rare release. So this is super rare number 9. So you have Stereden Binary Stars. Now, Stereden Binary Stars was one of the earliest super rare physical releases, and you could just tell again by the number. I don't know how many physical copies were released. I'm not sure if it says it there behind that card. I kept my copy sealed, and I just downloaded the game because I wanted to keep my copy sealed. Stereden Binary Stars at this point, man, is like a $250 to $300 game. I get it. This is a very cool shoot 'em up. It's like a side-scrolling shoot 'em up. And the art style on this game reminds me a lot of Freedom Finger. If you've never played Freedom Finger, that's another side-scrolling shoot 'em up released by Super Rare. Another game that's kind of gone up in price. Or actually, Freedom Finger's gone down in price. Freedom Finger and Stereden Binary Stars used to be on par with their values to a degree. And now Stereden Binary Stars has just kind of taken this massive leap. And Freedom Finger has actually gone down in price from what I'm seeing. And so I'm just showcasing all these varying examples of games that have held their price, games that have shot up in price, and then games that have gone down in price to say that it's very tricky right now collecting for the Switch. The pricing of games is kind of all over the place, and especially when you niche down into these more niche categories. I think if you're just buying like regular Switch games that are just kind of like off the shelf games like Astral Chain are always going to be, you know, in the $40 range. You know, games like Ninja Turtles, Shredder's Revenge are always going to be in the $30 range. You know, Metroid Dread is always going to be a $45 to $50 game. Same thing with Hyrule Warriors, Age of Calamity. These are games that you just typically see kind of everywhere, right? These aren't like really hard to find games. But then you have a game like Gravity Circuit, which at this point is still, I think this is still a cheap game. It's still probably like a $30 or so game. It's probably not super expensive. But did I say Gravity Rush? Sorry, Gravity Circuit is a game that I could see 2 or 3 years from now randomly exploding in price. Why? We don't know, but it's just going to be one of those games that you don't really see a lot. It doesn't have like a very strong print run, and it's not a game that you see often. But I do see something like this going up in price. And then even a game like Freedom Finger, this is the game that I was mentioning to you guys before. Freedom Finger was a pretty pricey game. Freedom Finger has gone down, and Freedom Finger is a hilarious shoot 'em up. I mean, look at that. This is your spaceship. You fly it in this spaceship that's shaped like a hand, and it shoots these little beams out. It's a very funny game. A lot of comedy with this one, but this one's gone down, right? So there's no real rhyme or reason as to why these prices change. Same thing with Attack on Titan 2. Attack on Titan 2 was crazy expensive at one point. $150 game. It's come back down to earth to around 50 or 60 bucks, right? So what does all this mean for you if you are collecting Switch games? What does all this mean if you're trying to build a Switch collection, especially now that the Switch 2 is out? My recommendation, again, just like I said in the beginning of the video, I would figure out what your 2 or 3 niches are in terms of the category of games that you want to collect for, and then just attack that category, and build your collection based off of that. I feel like because it's so easy to put games on the Switch, and because there are so many games on the Switch, it's easy to buy games that are really redundant, where you're buying the same game, or you're buying a game that's just like a weaker version of a game you really like. And that's something that I've tried to avoid when it comes to the Switch. Like, I'll give you 2 examples. Shredder's Revenge, in my opinion, was a massive success. I think this is a very well done beat 'em up game. And so I think companies saw that, and they've tried to redo what was done with Shredder's Revenge. You've seen it with the Karate Kid, which was a subpar version of Shredder's Revenge. They've recently done it with Power Rangers Rita's Rewind. In my opinion, another subpar version of Shredder's Revenge. Gameplay wise, it just doesn't play as good, in my opinion. And now they have a Marvel game, Marvel superheroes game that's coming out that looks like it's gonna follow the same format. I don't know how well that one's gonna do. We'll have to wait and see. Hopefully it's on par. But I'll notice that on the Switch, where you'll have a successful game, and then developers will try to recreate this game with a different skin or with a different theme. And so you just have to be mindful of that. I've also seen that happen with a game like Blasphemous, one of my favorite Metroidvania style games. I've seen so many other developers try to recreate Blasphemous in their own way with games like The Last Faith, which is a subpar version of Blasphemous, or games like Moonscars, which again is a subpar version of Blasphemous. If I want to play a Blasphemous-like game, I'm just going to go either play Blasphemous 1 or 2. I'm not going to, play all these games that are literally carbon copies of Blasphemous, but just less appealing. And that's something that you will run into on the Switch from time to time. So niche down, do your research, figure out the types of games that you like, and then just go from there. But I do think that we're going to see a lot of shifting with Switch collecting and with Switch game prices over the next couple of years, as more and more people get the Switch 2 in their hands and go back and rediscover the original Switch library, because right now that library is amazing. But let me know what you guys think about this, and I will catch you in the next video. It's the Y2K Collector. Take it easy.